nos dirigimos a una de las principales bases militares del ejército israelí en Tel Aviv, la sede del portavoz, acompañados constantemente de una soldada ante las estrictas normas para encontrarnos con el portavoz para la prensa internacional, una entrevista exclusiva para el público hispano.
Teniente Coronel Nadav Shoshani, desde el punto de vista militar, ¿qué porcentaje de los objetivos marcados por el gobierno israelí es la guerra?
Well, after the horrible terror attack of October 7th, the massacre of Israelis, we put out very clear goals to the war. One is to dismantle Hamas and make sure that they can't ever do this again. Second one is returning our hostages. And the third one is returning security to our borders and returning the Israeli civilians to northern Israel. And if we look at it in those perspectives of the goals and the objectives of the war, as the government said, we have advanced a lot in dismantling Hamas, making sure that they don't have this capability again. There's still a way to go in that regard. Out of the 251 hostages that Hamas took on October 7th, there are still 101 hostages in Gaza. There is still a long way to go. 101 hostages being held in Gaza in horrible conditions. We've seen those tunnels where you can't even stand upright. There's no bathrooms, no sign line for weeks. Talking about civilians, women, children, elderly in Gaza in those tunnels. So we've gone away, but there's still a way to go. And talking about the north, we have been able to push back Hezbollah, but still we need to change the reality in a way that our civilians feel safe enough to return to their homes in northern Israel.
¿Cómo es posible que, habiendo recibido información previa sobre lo que estaba pasando en Gaza con Hamas, el ejército haya tardado 7 horas, Teniente Coronel, para reaccionar y para defender a la población del sur?
It's important to understand the strategic situation that Israel, the IDF and the government were in prior to October 7th. Hamas for years has been deceiving us, portraying as this type of organization that is looking for a solution while they were planning a terror attack, taking their money, taking the funds from the world to plan this terror attack and to deceive Israel into this terror attack. And Israel, at the same time, was looking for a long-term solution between Gaza, between Israel, looking for solutions. And on the events of October 7th, this is an attack that Hamas is planning for years, one of the world's largest terror attacks. And we are studying now what we could have done better, learning how this never happens again, and learning the lessons learned. We've had commanders take responsibility, leave the army, but this is still a process ongoing. At the same time that we're fighting this horrible terror organization, trying to return our hostages, it's important to understand the strategic situation where Hamas has been deceiving us for years, trying to portray as an organization that doesn't want war, and planning this war in a very secret way for years.
Teniendo Israel fuentes de inteligencia militar importante, ¿cómo es posible que en Gaza y en el Líbano se hayan construido durante años de años kilómetros de túneles que no fueron reportados y destruidos con operaciones militares?
I think it's no surprise. I think for years we've said there are tunnels in Gaza, there are tunnels in Lebanon. In 2019, we showed the world Hezbollah tunnels coming into Israel. Throughout the years, we've blocked tunnels of Hamas trying to infiltrate Israel. We've done that successfully. We've prevented that from happening, and we've showed it to the world. But we've said Hamas is taking those billions of dollars from the world to the people of Gaza, taking it, preventing it from getting to the people of Gaza, and building tunnels. They've said it publicly. It's not even a matter of intelligence. The problem is not that we didn't know. The problem is no one cared. No one in the world did anything. I can tell you personally. Almost 5 years ago, when I was in the intelligence directorate, I showed a map of Beirut showing Hezbollah is holding weapons in this civilian building, underneath this building, holding weapons.
And why you don't make it work? ¿Por qué no trabajaron eso? O sea, why you don't destroy it?
And Israel, and this is not what you hear in the media. Israel is not a country that is looking for war. Israel is a country that defends itself because it has to, and we're not looking for war. And you know what happened? 5 years, we've showed that target in Beirut, in the Dahya, that Hezbollah is abusing the civilian population and hiding weapons under the building. You know what happened? Nothing. The country of Lebanon, the international community, nothing. And now when they start operating with these weapons against Israel, last night we attacked that target. But The problem was not that there was no intelligence. It was very clear. The whole world knew, and the whole world didn't do anything to prevent this type of war, to prevent of Hezbollah and Hamas abusing their own population.
And now is the moment for prevent?
And now we're operating in self-defense. We're operating to prevent those attacks from Israelis. You know, they're firing rockets, hundreds of rockets towards Israel. And if we don't strike those rockets, if it's in southern Lebanon, in the Baqa or in Dakhia, those rockets are going to be shot at me and you and people in Israel. And just yesterday, those rockets killed 2 Israeli civilians in northern Israel. This is a war that Hezbollah initiated, but we will defend ourselves and we'll attack back. And we've done that very successfully, taking away a lot of their abilities. We're talking about one of the world's largest terror organization that is funded by Iran. We're talking of billions of dollars that are going to terror. We're talking about decades of planning, years of hiding these weapons, and we're dealing with that. We're fighting back. We're taking away their abilities and preventing their attacks.
¿Puede sentirse Israel segura frente a todos los ataques actualmente abiertos que hay por parte del enemigo?
We've been for more than a year in a war, a 7-front war. I think something you haven't seen around the world. Different countries have not faced this kind of threat. That Iran is the instigator, the funder, the one that gives the weapons to it. But we're facing threats from 7 directions, and I think what we've shown in the last year is resilience of a people that stand for their right to defend themselves. We've seen amazing abilities in defense. You know, we've seen one of the most amazing defense battles in history. You know, we've seen the Israel alongside U.S. and other partners taking down 99% of a ballistic attack towards Israel. You know, that's something that hasn't happened anywhere in the world, not that attack and not that defense. So I think the people of Israel know we're in this complex war, but they know that the IDF is here to defend its people, to strike back when needed, to remove those threats from us, and we've been doing it for a year. Sadly, there's been casualties, but there's a lot of success against our enemies, and I think we've shown our abilities throughout the Middle East.
La gente en Estados Unidos, en Latinoamérica, ven muy lejano lo que puede ser por dentro la Armada israelí. ¿Qué es lo que más usted puede destacar del ejército israelí?
I think the first thing to understand about the IDF is built from civilians. It is mandatory service for the civilians of Israel. Every person goes. I went, my brother, my sister, my child, I hope one day, and when she's grown up, we won't need to have a large army, but Israelis go to service when they turn 18. And in this war, hundreds of thousands of civilians, including me, I was a civilian a few months ago, left their jobs, left their families, and went and put their uniform on to defend their country, because this is not a war we chose. This is not some sort of option. We have to defend ourselves. If we don't defend ourselves, these terror organizations said, it's not intelligence, said publicly, and they showed us, they tried to do it. They want to annihilate the state of Israel off the map of the earth. And they want to destroy us and kill every single person in this country. And it doesn't even matter nationality. We've seen on October 7th the killing and kidnapping of dozens of nationalities in one day. Brutality that hasn't been seen around the world. And we understand that this is our time. Young people, young men and women from around Israel. This is our time to defend our people because we have no other option.
¿Le importa a usted la opinión positiva o negativa que la comunidad internacional tenga del ejército israelí?
Well, first of all, we operate the way we operate because of our values, not because we're trying to look good or trying to impress someone. Our values are that we are fighting terrorists, we're not fighting civilians, that we bring in humanitarian aid, that we do our best to differentiate between terrorists and civilians. But there is a real problem. We see propaganda of really driven by those terrorists and driven by Iran and driven by Hamas and Hezbollah, spreading fake news about Israel, and this is something we face and see every day, and we have to face it and answer and show the real answers. People are talking, saying there's no aid in Gaza. I saw with my own eyes this week the trucks going into Gaza with the aid. People are saying that that we attack a hospital. But Hamas is hiding.
Hospital.
Hamas has turned that hospital into a base, and we attacked Hamas terrorists. And so we are facing fake news every day. It's something that we have to fight, and we have to say our truth. But what we do and how we operate is because of our values and because what we believe in, not because we're trying to portray some sort of picture.
¿Qué opina usted con respecto a UNRWA y todo lo que el ejército israelí consiguió de UNRWA en Gaza?
I think UNRWA has a clear connection to terror. We've seen UNRWA workers on October 7th talking about the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. UNRWA workers talking about, I think it's something unbelievable. UN workers participated in a terror attack, and there's no outcry from the UN. And what they're doing instead of apologizing is trying to direct the fire at Israel, trying to make up claims against Israel. You know, UNRWA has sadly failed very horribly in Gaza. You know, we're talking about in other parts of the world, UN agencies do their job for a year or two, and they help the population there. UNRWA became a job in Gaza. A lot of the people in UNRWA would be terrorists in day and then work at UNRWA at night, or the opposite. We've seen huge infrastructure of Hamas under an UNRWA building. How can they build a tunnel under UNRWA and UNRWA can say we didn't know? How can their worker be involved in the massacre of civilians, you know, killing them, abducting them? You know, the guy in charge of taking Hirsch Goldberg into Gaza, when we were able to eliminate him, you know what UNRWA said? They said that we killed one of their workers. So I think there's an element that instead of looking into these things, and they've admitted their workers were involved in terror, instead of looking into that and maybe looking in the mirror, they're trying to kind of spin the blame on Israel, where we know we're not perfect. But this thing is something unheard of UN workers involved in terror, and there's no outcry from the UN, and vice versa. They're trying to put the blame on Israel on that, and Israel's not perfect, but this is a reality that I've never heard of, and it's crazy that they're not taking responsibility for it, and they're not trying to fix it, but they're actually blaming Israel for that.
¿Qué piensa usted cuando presidentes como el colombiano Gustavo Petro califica a Israel de genocida en las acciones militares en Gaza?
I think that comes from either not understanding the situation or trying to speak to some sort of audience that he's trying to speak to. Every person that came, and he's invited to come, I'll personally make sure he can see everything happening in Gaza. Every person who came to Israel, I'm talking about generals from around the world, said that Israel is conducting this war in one of the most precise ways in history. We're talking about a war with a terrorist organization that is hiding on purpose behind civilians, and we're talking about an army that every time we attack, every time we have a big operation, we tell the people we are about to operate. Armies don't do that. They don't say we're coming here, be ready. But we do that every time to make sure that the civilians get out of harm's way. You know that the state of Israel provided polio vaccines for all the people of Gaza? We facilitated a campaign of polio vaccines. Who does that? Who does that if they're claiming we're doing a genocide? Do you know the state of Israel, there's thousands of people, money, time, infrastructure. You know, Hamas blew up the crossings into Gaza. You know what Israel did? They fixed the crossings. We brought in over a ton of aid. Over 1.1 tons of aid into Gaza. We're giving electricity, we're giving water, we're giving medicine. We're giving up our military advantage to make sure that civilians are not getting hurt. You know, the only genocide in the Middle East is Hamas trying to commit a genocide against the state of Israel, and we were able to prevent it. The terrorist organization said that if they could, they would kill every Jew. That's genocide. The state of Israel said very clearly, we're fighting Hamas and Hamas only. We're going to put out so much effort to make sure that our war is only against Hamas. We're going to bring aid. We're going to get the people out of harm's way. There's a humanitarian area in Gaza where people are safer. There's aid going in every day. This is something that soldiers of an army, while we're fighting a terror organization, you know, Hamas is fighting us to prevent the aid from getting to their people because they don't want that to happen. They like these kind of conversations and questions. We are actually fighting Hamas also because they're terrorists, but we're also fighting them to bring aid to the people of Gaza. You know, at the moment right now, this is facts. There are almost 900 trucks in Gaza waiting to be picked up by the international organizations for the people. Sitting in the sun, Israel brought the aid in. The international organizations like UNRWA did not take it, not bringing it to the people of Gaza. Part of it is because they're not doing it. Part of it is because Hamas. But the facts are telling everything opposite and saying that is just a claim that is not based at all on facts. It is based maybe trying to speak to some sort of public,
yes,
not based on facts. And the only genocide, and they've said it clearly, you know, you need to listen to their statements in Arabic, not do their statements in English. They've said it very clearly. If they can, they'll commit a genocide against the state of Israel, against Jews, and that's what we're fighting. First, there's an element of Hamas lying. You know, you see in the news the health ministry in Gaza is saying something. That health ministry is run by Hamas, a terror organization. I've never seen anyone in the world, when ISIS says something, take it as facts. So one, those facts are not correct. And second, this is a horrible war. Hamas inflicted their war. They're responsible for this war starting. They're responsible for this war because they're hiding behind a civilian population, and they're responsible for this war not ending. They're still holding 101 hostages. This is not a war Israel picked. Israel is doing everything in its power to prevent civilian harm, and Hamas is doing everything in their power to create civilian harm and to push it out to the media, and a lot of it is fake. And I think that is something important to understand in the way this war is conducting. And I want to tell you, every loss of life is tragic. I recently became a father, it changed me, but even before, every loss of life is a tragedy on both sides. This is a war that Hamas started, inflicted on all of us. We do everything we can to fight those terrorists and not fight the civilians. And having said that, the ratio in urban warfare in history, the ratio between combatants and non-combatants is the best in urban warfare's history. Any army in the world would tell you that the campaign that Israel is running is the most accurate in urban warfare's history.
El presidente de España, Pedro Sánchez, ha dicho que la comunidad internacional suspenda inmediatamente la venta de armas a Israel. Él dice, sin armas no hay guerra. ¿Qué opina usted, Teniente Coronel, con respecto a las palabras del presidente de España?
I think the thing missing here is Israel didn't choose this war. If it was up to us, this war would not happen, and this war would be over. You know, Israel is not wanting this war to go on. We have very clear goals. I think they're not something unacceptable. I think every country in the world would say we can't accept a terror organization trying to kill us, and we want to bring the hostages back. And preventing weapons would bring the opposite results. If we have accurate weapons, we have good weapons, it makes it faster, the war with Hamas, to defeat those terrorists and to try and return the normality for both sides.
¿Qué piensa usted de la presencia de Hezbolá en América Latina, la importancia para la Tzabá, para la Armada israelí de América Latina y la presencia de Irán también a través de Venezuela en América Latina?
We've seen Iran and Hezbollah. They're not just a problem for Israel. They're a global problem, a world problem. And they've said, you know, Iran is the number one producer and spreader of terror and weapons in the Middle East. And Hezbollah is one of the largest terror organizations in the world. And you know what we see. Everywhere Iran goes, everywhere Hezbollah goes, terror goes up, but the civilian life goes down. You know, we see it in Yemen, we see it in Lebanon, we see it in Syria. Iran doesn't care for those people. Iran cares to spread terror, to control, to have their weapons around the world. And we see that those countries pay a price for Iran, and Iran does not care about them. We've seen the horrible, what's been happening in recent years in Lebanon, horrible conditions for the people of Lebanon. The people of Lebanon do not want this war, and the state of Israel does not have a war with the people of Lebanon. Israel has a war with Hezbollah, and basically what Iran and Hezbollah are doing, they're putting Lebanon in the line of fire for Iran, not even for Lebanon. And that is something that Iran and Hezbollah do throughout the world, where they put their own interest over the interests of the countries that they're trying to infiltrate to.
Teniente Coronel Nadav Shoshani, muchísimas gracias por darnos la oportunidad al público hispano de conocer de cerca su opinión y la del ejército israelí.
Es un placer, Nicole. Gracias.
Gracias. Hola, bienvenidos a nuestro canal YouTube en español de i24 News. Si te gustó este contenido, me encantará recibir tu like y así conocerás Israel en español. Te invito a inscribirte y así también recibir todas las notificaciones de nuestro contenido. A través de nuestro QR me gustaría saber desde dónde nos ves. Gracias y hasta la próxima.